Imagine waking up one morning and stepping outside and not being able to see your own feet. The street in front of you has vanished. Your neighbors' houses have disappeared. The city of London, one of the most powerful capitals on Earth, has been swallowed whole. This wasn't a nightmare. This wasn't a scene from a horror film. This was the morning of December 5th, 1952. And what had crept into London overnight wasn't just fog. It was death itself. A thick, yellow-green, sulfurous poison had wrapped itself around 8 million people. It slithered under doors, crawled through windows, and settled into lungs. By the time it was over, between 10,000 and 12,000 people would be dead. And for days, the government told the people nothing was wrong. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to the London of 1952. Post-war Britain was cold, exhausted, and heavily dependent on coal. Every home had a coal fireplace. Every factory ran on coal. 5 massive coal-burning power stations: Battersea, Bankside, Fulham, Greenwich, and Kingston-upon-Thames pumped toxic smoke into the air around the clock. The city's double-decker buses ran on diesel. London was essentially one giant furnace. The weather in November and early December 1952 had been bitterly cold, with heavy snowfalls. And to keep warm, people were burning enormous quantities of coal in their homes, with smoke pouring from chimneys across the city. Then, nature set a trap. An anticyclone, a high-pressure weather system, parked itself directly over London, pushing warm air downward and creating what meteorologists call a temperature inversion. Cold air near the ground was sealed in place by warmer air above. There was no wind. There was no escape route. The smoke had nowhere to go. As the sun rose on Friday, the 5th of December, 1952, Londoners behaved as normal. But as the day progressed, the smog became thicker, and it became clear that this wasn't usual. By nightfall, visibility had dropped to just a few meters. By December 7th, there was virtually no sunlight, and visibility was reduced to 5 yards in many places. The smog wasn't just outside. It was inside. It crept through cracks in walls, under door frames, and into cinemas, theaters, and hospitals. Indoor performances were canceled because audiences could not see the stage. Ambulance services suffered, leaving people to find their own way to hospitals. Many simply abandoned their cars in the middle of the road. Crime spiked because police couldn't see through the darkness. Train collisions occurred near London Bridge. And at Smithfield Market, a cattle show took a horrifying turn. Cattle had been asphyxiated by the smog. If it was killing cows, imagine what it was doing to human lungs. The human cost was staggering and deliberately hidden. Government medical reports in the weeks following estimated that up to 4,000 people had died as a direct result of the smog, and 100,000 more were made ill. But these numbers were a cover-up. The government initially blamed an influenza epidemic. They didn't want to alarm the public. They didn't want to challenge the coal industry. Prime Minister Winston Churchill, focused on Britain's economic recovery, refused to acknowledge the true scale of the disaster. More recent research suggests the total number of fatalities was considerably greater, with estimates of between 10,000 and 12,000 deaths. Most deaths were caused by respiratory tract infections from hypoxia and mechanical obstruction of the airways, by pus arising from lung infections caused by the smog. People drowned, not in water, but in the fluid filling their own lungs. Death rates reached their highest level since the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918-1919. For weeks, the British government stayed silent. Funeral directors across London were overwhelmed. Across London, funeral directors reported a surge in bodies. So many that the demand for caskets was insatiable. Coffin supplies ran out. Florists ran out of flowers for funerals. And still, officially, nothing unusual had happened. It took a determined scientist, E.T. Wilkins of the Department of Scientific and Industrial Research, to chart the full picture. He plotted elevated death rates from December 1952 to March 1953, and found there had been an additional 8,000 deaths beyond those initially counted. The truth could no longer be buried. Public outrage forced Parliament's hand. The consequences prompted Parliament to pass the Clean Air Act 4 years later, in 1956, which marked a turning point in the history of environmentalism. The act banned black smoke emissions, forced factories to switch to cleaner fuels, and gave financial incentives to households to abandon coal fires. London's famous pea supers were gone, never to return on that scale. The Great Smog of London is not just a historical tragedy. It is a warning that has never stopped being relevant. Today, the World Health Organization attributes 7 million deaths globally to air pollution every year. And almost everyone on the planet is breathing levels of pollution that breach WHO guideline limits. Cities in China, India, and Pakistan are experiencing their own versions of London 1952. In 2013, a 9-year-old girl named Ella Kissy Debrahai died in London from a severe asthma attack. And in 2020, air pollution was listed as a cause of her death on her death certificate. The first time in Britain that air pollution was listed as a cause of death on a death certificate. 70 years after the Great Smog, we are still fighting the same enemy. The fog may have lifted from London, but the lesson of what happens when governments ignore pollution, when industries go unchecked, when people are told to stay quiet, that fog has never fully cleared. Don't let it come back.